Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm your host Lucas Servodio, growing a little stir-crazy from watching 5 hours of soccer a day. I wonder what will suffer most at the hands of the Euros and the Copa America, my mental health or my marriage. Only time will tell, dear listener. Speaking of healthy competition, Top Chef Season 21 is in the books. A champion has been crowned, both for Top Chef and our LA Food Pod Fantasy Top Chef. Father Sal and I are joined by Jessie Evans, also known as Jessie Eats, and Daniel Wargo, aka Forking Around, to recap the finale and the season as a whole. But first, a few things that caught my eye this week. An iconic LA fast food restaurant has closed forever. There's yet another twist in the restaurant service fee saga, and remember those pesky reservation resale platforms? Well, their days may be numbered. Finally, there's free political advice for vegans and a brand new LA Countdown website? OMG.com, dear listener. One more thing, I usually say this at the end, but I figured I'd throw it in here. If you're an LA Food Pod listener, please consider leaving us a review and a rating on Apple or Spotify. Those things really help get our humble podcast out into the world, and I would be forever grateful. Without further ado, let's chow down. Dear listener, I made a deal with my wife. She let me start a food podcast and eat ungodly amounts of noodles, pizza, sandwiches, and more under two conditions. One is that I never utter her name. The other is that I find ways to be healthy outside of my work in food. Being the fantastic partner I am, I found a few ways to up my health game. I exercise almost every day, I try to sneak in salads for lunch whenever I can, and I only ever snack on healthy foods. The macadamia nut has become an essential part of my daily routine with the best omega-6 to 3 ratios in the nut game, 8 times better than pistachios and 20 times better than cashews. At houseofmacadamias.com, they've got a bunch of different macadamia products that you can enjoy, like savory and sweet snack packs and chocolate-covered snack bars. One of the problems with macadamias I've found is that they can be expensive, but I'm solving this for you, dear listener, because as of today, all you've got to do is head to houseofmacadamias.com and use code LAFOOD to get a 10% discount on a healthy snack that also happens to be delicious. So what are you waiting for? Head to www.houseofmacadamias.com/discount/LAFood and go nuts. Dear listener, it's a marvelous Friday, sunny Friday in Los Angeles today, and we've got one heck of an episode for you. We're going to be talking Top Chef Season 21, which finally wrapped up this week. But first, I wanted to share a couple things that caught my eye this week. First up, some kind of sad fast food news, and we don't often talk about fast food on this podcast, but the Arby's on Sunset closed for good last Friday after more than 55 years of operation. If you've never been to this location, you've definitely seen it. It's famous because it's got this massive neon sign of a cowboy hat in front of it, and it's kind of like maybe one of the most iconic neon signs in all of Los Angeles. I think that's fair to say. I personally have never been to this location, but I have been to an Arby's before. Actually, when I was 12 or 13 years old, it was my first time coming to the United States since I was a baby. And my mother had long told us stories of how when she was in college in Ohio, she worked at an Arby's. So, Arby's had sort of this like mythical quality to it whenever we would hear about it. And when we came to the United States and we took a road trip, one of the places that we would always be looking out for is Arby's. You can only imagine my disappointment when I finally rolled up to an Arby's and had a very lackluster roast beef sandwich with some halfway decent curly fries, but nothing to write home about. Even as like a 12 to 13-year-old unsophisticated palate Luca, I could tell this was nothing special. However, that neon sign is something special. And it's kind of interesting because this is a fast food location, right? And we see fast food locations close around town all the time, right? Maybe a Subway leaves, a Starbucks leaves, whatever it is. But this one really captured the imagination of Los Angeles media. Everybody and their grandmothers wrote about it. My favorite piece was actually in the Los Angeles Times, authored by Brian A. Hearn. He did a great job actually speaking to the owners and the operators of that Arby's, sort of getting a little bit of the story behind why they're closing. And it's a lot of familiar themes, right? They were talking about how the pandemic changed the neighborhood and therefore the clientele as well. He was talking about the rising food costs. He was talking about recent laws, especially the minimum wage hike, which we knew was going to be affecting fast food establishments in a particular way. So, similar to the reasons that we've seen a lot of smaller restaurants close, this Arby closed for the same reasons. Now, a couple fun facts about this Arby's. It was the 150th Arby location in the nation, period. Now there are thousands of Arby locations, but this was number 150 back in 1969 when it opened. Since it opened in 1969, it had been owned by a single owner, which is kind of cool. And it was also home to a couple cool pop culture moments. I think Jerry Seinfeld went there in his Riding in Cars with Comedians or whatever it's called. And Patton Oswalt was also seen eating here after winning one of the awards that he won pretty close after to his wife's passing, actually. So it was kind of this like, and I think he went there because it was one of his wife's favorite restaurants. So kind of a cool, touching moment that the Arby's on Sunset played home to. Anyways, RIP to Arby's. I personally won't miss you from a culinary perspective, but I will miss you from an aesthetic perspective. And in one of the articles, it said that the owners are planning on selling the sign. So who knows? Maybe we can pull some LA Food Pod cash together and purchase it. I don't think I can store it in my house, but maybe a listener could store it in their garage. Who knows? On to some matters that may currently affect restaurants that are still in operation. Remember that junk fee law we've talked so much about that may prevent restaurants from charging those service fees, aka those like 5 to 10% fees that are tacked on at the end of your bill that are supposed to go to pay for staff benefits and things like that? Well, it turns out that restaurants may not have to 86 them after all. State Senator Bill Dodd is fast tracking legislation that would actually exempt restaurants from having to abide by the junk fee law. So the junk fee law would continue, but it would only apply to things like rental cars or hotels or places where you go and the bill at the end when you're paying isn't the same as the advertised cost. So under this new fast tracked legislation, restaurants would actually be exempted from this. Now, this is particularly interesting because Attorney General Rob Bonta, who has sort of been the face of the original junk fee bill, just a couple of weeks ago said that restaurants would, in the affirmative, have to abide by the legislation. Apparently, what happened is that Senator Dodd sprung into action after restaurants and unions spoke up. At least that's the way that the Sacramento press is spinning it. The new law, as Dodd wrote it, basically would just require restaurants to include, quote unquote, clear and conspicuous notices that fees exist. And even so, the restaurants would have about a year to do this. Now, I did want to point out that the California Restaurant Association is named as a co-sponsor of the new bill. I think this is pretty cool because it's kind of a reminder that when it comes to policy, it ain't over till it's over, folks. I think it was actually really important that so many restaurateurs spoke up in the media, that journalists reported on the story about what it could actually mean for restaurants to have to abide by this junk fee law. And as we see from the CRA being named as a co-sponsor, for the unions to actually get involved. You know, we've heard about the fact that maybe restaurants don't have quite as much muscle as some of the other unions playing in Sacramento, but this is a reminder that sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. What happens now? We shall see, and we'll keep talking about it on the podcast. But the way I see it is restaurants, if this goes through, have the power to not fuck up a good thing, so to speak. AKA, they should just really try to be transparent about service fees being moving forward. They should try to be good stewards of those fees, meaning, don't say you're using them for benefits and then use them for something else, kind of like those lawsuits that we've seen happen in recent months. Because the more stories that percolate up like that, that'll only serve to pique the legislature's interest again in a negative way. And that's the last thing we want. From a consumer perspective, this just means that that sticker shock that we were worried about, right? Your green lentils going up from $9 to $12. It might not happen. However, you're still going to have that service fee at the end. Really, the big winner here is whoever made that spreadsheet that listed out all the service charges and ended up sending it out to all the LA food publications. I'm sure he's sleeping really well knowing that all of the work he put into that spreadsheet is not now wasted. As I said, this is going to be a continually evolving conversation, so we'll keep you updated. Picking up another loose thread that we've talked about on the podcast before, you might remember that Sage Vegan Bistro recently announced that they were switching over to Sage Regenerative Kitchen, aka they were going to start serving meat, not just vegan food, but meat that was raised in like a humane regenerative fashion. Well, animal rights protesters, when the news was made, spoke out loudly, but they've actually taken to the streets protesting outside of Sage in Echo Park recently. Apparently it's gotten so bad that diners have actually left the restaurant. They've also chalked the words quote unquote Chef Molly Killer on the sidewalk, accusing Chef Molly Engelhart of being a killer, right? To be clear, I don't have a problem with veganism, right? If you want to be plant-based, be plant-based. But when you start to try to force your view on other people in ways that are frankly distasteful, that's when I start to have a little bit of a problem with it. And it's not just because I myself am turned on. I just think it's one of the stupidest tactics you can take as a movement that is trying to accomplish something. So here's what I'm going to do. Vegans, I'm going to give you some political advice for free. And this is just me being magnanimous. In college, I only took 2 classes that helped me even just a little bit. One was on political psychology and one was on political communications. Now, in the political communications class, our professor, shout out Professor Dan Schnur, taught us about how to think about the audiences that we are communicating to when we are trying to achieve a political goal, whether it's advancing a cause or getting a candidate elected. Basically, when you think about your audience and your electorate, you can break it up into 3 categories. 1, you've got your saints. Those are the people that no matter what are your ride or dies. That's the choir. That's what they mean when they say you're preaching to the choir, okay? Those people are already voting for you. Number 2, you've got your sinners. Those are the people that are on the other side of the aisle that no matter how loud you scream, no matter how compelling your arguments are, they will never, ever vote for you or support your cause. The people all of your communications or most of your communications should be targeted towards are the people in the middle. These people Professor Schnur called the salvageables. Now, I'm not sure why this was such like a, religious tinged example, but it resonated with me. And the salvageables are the people in the middle who still are kind of undecided voters, right? They're the people who will respond to good communications, to compelling arguments, to effective tactics. Vegans have the same challenge. They have their saints. They have people who are on their side, who maybe already vegans, who maybe already support their cause. They have their sinners, people who no matter what are always going to be eating their steak and think that what they're doing is stupid. But there are also people in the middle, salvageables, who maybe aren't going to switch to veganism, but who could very well be in support of their cause, especially when it comes to whatever political agendas they're trying to advance. Is their agenda to pass legislation? Is their agenda to get more restaurants to adopt plant-based food? Whatever their agenda is, the people they should be targeting are the salvageables. And I'll just say this, I think the tactics that they use are major turnoffs for salvageables. Major turnoffs. Because these tactics come across as obnoxious. They come across as violent. They're not really making an argument, right? They're not making an argument in favor of why being plant-based is good for the planet, good for your health. All that they're doing is shaming small business owners and damaging their livelihoods. That's a dick move. I would personally consider myself a salvageable, and I am personally extremely turned off by those tactics. If there are any vegan activists out there listening, and I highly doubt it, but here's your political advice for free. Think about who your salvageables are, and think about how you might appeal to them as opposed to just destroying small businesses for fun. Because that's all this is, really. Well, that seems like a good time to get off my soapbox. Remember when we discussed the reservation resale market, i.e. people who just lurk online on platforms like Resi and OpenTable, waiting to snag up reservations so they can resell them for a profit? Well, New York State passed a bill that would make this practice illegal. It's the first state to do this, and when this kind of thing happens, you can kind of expect other states to follow the lead, especially states where this is a problem. I think this is a good thing that the New York State legislature did, because as we discussed, like the people who really hurt from this are twofold. One, it's restaurants who, when you get these like vultures basically snagging up all these reservations, and those people aren't in turn able to sell them. What ends up happening is you have a lot of like no-shows at restaurants, and it's very unpredictable for a restaurant when that happens. Secondly, the people that it protects are consumers who have a hard time getting reservations at hotspots to begin with. It creates a bit more of a level playing field, meaning anybody who wants can, in theory, meritocratically hit up one of the platforms and try to get a reservation. I'd say I like this more because of the former reason as opposed to the latter. I don't have a ton of sympathy for people who just like can't be seated at Carbone. I think I've said this before, but just go dine somewhere else. Plenty of other restaurants that make spicy fusilli and would love your dollars. But yeah, overall, definitely a good thing. Although I will say I do have to start looking for alternative sources of income because once I saw how much some of those people were making, you best believe I started thinking about doing it myself. I think one guy made like $70,000 a year just by like reselling reservations for 5 minutes a day. Not bad work if you can get it, folks. Not bad work at all. Okay, final thing before we move on to the conversation on Top Chef. I just wanted to send LA Food Pod condolences to the friends and family of James Kent. Now, James Kent was a New York-based chef with the Saga Hospitality Group who passed away this week. However, he had also recently planted his flag in LA by reimagining the menu of Santa Monica Pier. So really doing God's work. Because if you've been down to Santa Monica Pier, you know the food options were rough down there for a very, very long time. And now you have some way more elevated, way more delicious food. I will say, whether you were familiar with James Kent's work or not, I highly recommend going to read some of the tributes. It's really apparent the kind of impact that he had on the lives of the people that he worked with and on the people that he served. He definitely seems like he was one of the good guys, and we're just sending all of our best LA Food Pod wishes to the people who are hurting right now. Fun fact, he actually worked with Danny Garcia, Top Chef contestant, who we'll be talking about a lot right after the break. Last thing, one quick housekeeping thing. Really exciting news, but we finally have a website, dear listener. The LACountdown.com is now up and running. Right now, its main function is twofold. You can go there and check out the lists that I make on my social media. So, for example, the sandwich database, which is basically like an archive of all of LA's most epic sandwiches, now lives on the website in a super easy to find, easy to navigate way. Also, you can find the podcast on the website. And finally, you can sign up for our Substack newsletter, which we're working on developing, and it will be another way to hear from us, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. We're still ironing out the details. But if you do have ideas of the type of things you'd like to hear about in a Substack newsletter, maybe you want to hear about restaurant openings, maybe you just want like a news roundup, maybe you just want fun musings or humor, drop us a note because we're very much in the process of ideating the newsletter right now. But go ahead and sign up for it in the meantime. I did want to quickly give a huge shout out to Micah Cohen, my buddy, for setting up the website. Super nice, super helpful, super talented guy. The only bone I have to pick with Micah is that because of him, I'm no longer a nailed-on starter in our Sunday League soccer team. He's a very hardworking, hard-to-play against midfielder, and he makes my job getting in the team extremely difficult. Okay, Micah? So maybe ease off a little bit, okay? Well, that'll probably do for today, dear listener. We'll be right back with our guest to talk Top Chef right after the break. Dear listener, my wife recently decided to start eating meat after more than 15 years of being a vegetarian, and being the conscientious consumer that I am, I've been looking for ways to make our household's meat consumption as high quality and sustainable as possible. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled to have found First Light Farms, a small collective of passionate family farmers in New Zealand who are quietly changing the world. Not only are they producing the most tender, rich, and succulent Wagyu beef money can buy, but you can rest assured that First Light's cattle were raised as nature intended, living it up on lush pasture, eating a 100% grass diet with absolutely no grains, no animal byproducts, and no feedlots. The result is the best tasting meat in the game, full of natural marbling and packed with omega-3 fats. If you've ever enjoyed a meal at Ma2 in Beverly Hills, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ma2 famously sources all of its meat directly from First Light, and the good news is that you too can have First Light Farms meats delivered straight to your door. All you have to do is visit www.firstlight.com firstlight.farm, where you can buy their meats and also sign up for their members-only steak club. Members of the steak club enjoy tons of benefits, including monthly shipments of steaks, access to the highest marble score meats, and, this is my favorite part, access to First Light's full library of proprietary recipes and techniques. Also, you can cook the perfect steak within the comfort of your own home. Buying good steak isn't easy and it isn't cheap. First Light delivers the highest quality at an incredible deal, and now that I've seen the light, I'm never going back. Visit www.firstlight.farm to learn more and use the code LAFood10 for a 10% discount on your first order. Dear listener, season 21 of Top Chef is finally in the books, so I am joined by my friends with whom we started this journey to recap the finale and season 21. Let's go around the horn to welcome everybody. Kicking things off, it's a man that you know is forking around, but I call him Daniel Wargo. Daniel, how you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be back on.
Daniel, it's true that you only started watching the season like 72 hours ago?
Something like that. I think it was Saturday. So whenever that is.
That's wild. And you just binged it all last minute.
I binged a lot. I'm very hungry.
Yeah. He has not left his apartment. I'll be interested to hear whether you took it in positively or whether it was a slog to make it through the season.
It was fun. I actually loved watching it that way. I think that was probably better than if I would have watched it week by week.
Wow. So I wouldn't recommend it personally, but Daniel would. So there you go.
Yeah.
Also welcoming back to the podcast, you know her as Jessie Eats on social media, but her name is Jessie Evans. Jessie, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be reunited with you guys, talk about our favorite show, and be back on the pod.
Oh, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you on. But Jessie, you've been globetrotting since we last spoke.
I have been doing this thing called travel. I went to Italy. I went to Copenhagen. So the jet lag is finally settled. Perfect timing for this podcast.
What was your favorite meal you had during your travels? I know it's probably an impossible question to answer, but I got to ask.
Okay, I have two. Italy, in Bologna, we went to this one restaurant, Mirasole, and had the best tortellini of my dreams from the dairy farm and the sauce. It was just delicious and delicate and beautiful, and it happened to be my engagement day celebration. So,
whoa,
it holds a special place in my heart.
Wow, I was going to say, I believe congratulations are in order.
She's engaged!
Congratulations.
And then I just went to Alchemist. I am still processing in Copenhagen. It is beyond food. It is more than emotions. It's more than feelings. It's literally out of this world.
That's one of the world's 50 best. It was just named on the world's 50 best, right?
Yes. Well deserved. Yes.
Wow. Fresh off the world's 50 best. Well, we'll have to make sure to stalk your social media to see all of the posts and kind of live vicariously through you.
Exactly. I want to take you with me.
Well, as I said, congratulations. You know, you just mentioned you got engaged. You and your handsome, charming fiance, who I only know him as Fredicini, but was this engagement planned? Like, were you expecting it, or was this a surprise when you got to Bologna?
It was we were talking about it, but Bologna was a big surprise. It was a big surprise.
That's awesome. It's always tricky to land the surprise sometimes. I know this. My wife was not surprised at all. In fact, I actively ruined the surprise the night of the engagement, but that's a story for another time. Moving on to welcome a man who we call Father Sal, but I don't even know his full name anymore. He is our Top Chef correspondent on this podcast. Father Sal, how you doing?
I'm here. I'm ready to face the music of this season of Fantasy Top Chef. No, I'm really excited. I'm excited to talk about the season, which was new in a bunch of different ways. And yeah, let's dive in, man.
Well, Saul, why don't we just not bury the lead, cut to the chase? Why don't you give us a recap of where things ended up with Fantasy Top Chef?
All right, I'll do this. As we go along here, I'm going to share some moments. I went back and listened to our draft, and I'm going to note a couple of cool sliding doors moments in retrospect that you guys may not remember. So first of all, in last place is your valiant defending champion with the team of Laura Azilmaz, Valentine Howell Jr., and Charlie Pierre. You might not remember those last two because they were eliminated so long ago, but they were part of the competition. I ended up with 25 measly points. Of course, the big sliding doors moment for me was picking Laura over Danny Garcia first overall. I had a path that is a fork in the road, and I chose the wrong road. But then we had Daniel coming in third, just behind Luca, 78 points, an all-female team of Amanda Turner, Alicia Ellens, Savannah Miller, and Kalina Bliss. Not bad. Luca edging him out just in front with 82 points, just a 4-point difference. Luca with Kevin DeAndrea, David Murphy, Dan Jacobs, and Manny Lopez. Luca, I don't know if you remember this.
Yes, huge sliding doors moment.
Yeah, you with your last pick, Luca was going between Manny and Michelle, and he was talking it out on the pod when we did our draft, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to change my mind last second. I'm going Manny. And if Luca had drafted Michelle, this would have been a much closer battle. Who knows what could have happened?
I think it's because Daniel got in my head. He said he wanted an all-female team, and I almost was trying to rob that from him, and I didn't. So it really was my altruism that happened.
Totally, yeah. That's why you lose. Nice guys lose, Luca. You should know this by now. And then finally, our champion, recently engaged, but I'm sure this is even more exciting for her. Jessie Eats with 156 points, a dominant performance with Danny Garcia, Rusika Venkatesa, Kenny Nyen, and Michelle Wallace. Well done, Jessie.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's kind of wild. Jessie, how does it feel?
I am so proud. This is a huge accomplishment. Hours of Instagram stalking and looking at resumes and looking at winners' faces and watching the trailer really, really paid off.
Well, as a reminder, dear listener, the prize for winning Fantasy Top Chef is that when the LA Times Restaurant of the Year is announced, Jessie will be receiving a voucher to go eat there, and she can bring us. She can also not bring us. She can, treat her fiance. It's completely up to her, but that is her prize for being the Top Chef champion, which is way better than Father Saul's prize last year, which I think was nothing.
No, you took me to whole Bosch?
Oh yes, I took you to Holbosch. Okay, so that was quite the prize. So it's exactly what Jessie is getting.
It would be my honor to have you all be included in this dinner. I think we should keep celebrating the win. We have to keep talking about the win. So nobody else in my life will care. Only the three of you. So it would be my honor to have you join me.
All right, mark your calendars for this yet to be named date, Daniel and Father Saul. Well, I'm really happy. It's cool. Jessie, at every single moment of the season, it felt like you had the best person on the show. Like when Rosika was like the person to beat, you had her. When Michelle was the person to beat, you had her. And then obviously Danny really caught fire towards the end, even though he was kind of killing it all along, but really started dominating. And you had him too. It's like, it almost feels like you had some insider information.
For the record, I had zero insider information. As much as I tried to squeeze it out of somebody that I knew was going to be on this show, he did not let loose. He did not tell me a single thing. Not even was it fun? Was it exciting?
That's something you mentioned, which I'm going to take forward with me. First of all, I leaned way too heavily on the trailer this year. In fact, the entire reason I picked Laura over Danny is because Danny's face was the first we saw in the trailer, and I literally thought, well, they're not going to put the champion first in the trailer. That's crazy. And in fact, they did. So lesson learned number one. Number two, Instagram stalking is key. I had never done that before, but Instagram stalking to check the vibes of these chefs. By the way, Danny, I was raised Muslim. I'm not practicing, but Danny is converted to Muslim for his to Islam for his wife. Amazing guy, runs marathons, great vibes.
Yeah.
And Laura, no personality disrespect, not quite the same vibes. That's what I'll say. And maybe I would have learned that from Instagram and chosen differently. So that's definitely added to my arsenal of research next year.
Yeah, I think if I had just heard Danny speak, I would have maybe picked him, because the way he talks just conveys winner energy, and I didn't. I just had his kind of cheesy headshot to go off of, and I was like, this guy isn't going anywhere. He went there. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the finale specifically, because it was a little bit of a controversial finale, actually. There was a lot of X or Twitter conversation on it about whether the right person won, about whether it was a high-quality finale, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to get into it. Daniel, let's start with you. Let's start with a very simple question about the setting. How did you feel about them cooking the finale meal, which is such a quintessential part of the show, on a cruise ship.
It didn't really bother me at all. And I've been kind of staying away from the social media buzz because I don't want anyone to ruin it. I wouldn't even open the text messages that you guys were sending earlier because I was like, something's in there. And, I think there's been kind of a push late. I think it was last season or something where they had a cruise ship chef, or it just seems like cruise ships is going to be this place where fine dining will kind of take more of a hold in the future. And so it's kind of fun to me.
I know you had some strong opinions about this, Saul.
I appreciate Daniel's take on that because, well, for me, the issue was the finale location and where they eat the meal and where they're cooking. There are some really notable ones in history. Even Tucson during the Houston season, they were out in this beautiful field. It's like a really cool location, and it felt like you were in this kind of cramped boat. And I wasn't actually. I have a theory that the kitchen in the cruise ship was actually not. There were like a lot of technical issues, it seems, that the chefs had to overcome because I think the location being not ideal necessarily for cooking. I also was a little miffed by the fact that the reason they're on a cruise ship is because the cruise sponsored the show. It was a little bit, there was a little bit like a not sellouty, but a little bit of that, like, you got bought kind of component. And now instead of being in a beautiful, like cooking on the beach in the Caribbean, we are in the galley of a cruise ship instead. So, but I appreciate the perspective Daniel mentioned there. And I feel like they're not going to go back to a cruise ship anytime soon. I would guess. So we'll mix it up in the future.
Jessie, I saw you nodding along, and maybe that sponsor point resonated.
Yeah, I think the ongoing joke watching the show is the sponsors that are so in your face and obvious every time they drive to the supermarket in a specific car or water is poured. This definitely felt like a sponsor moment, and that's what I took it as.
And the finale is too sacred for a sponsor moment. It's a sacred moment. Let's not make it a sponsor moment.
I think it's just sponsor roulette because honestly, even when they go to like really cool places for the finale, like, that tourism board is probably what's sponsoring them going there. This just happened to be like a shitty sponsor, or like the whatever. It's not Viking Cruises, but whatever it was, Royal Holland or whatever. We don't need to give them more publicity. My question for you guys is, do you see yourself going on one of these cruises in the near future?
God forbid.
It did not inspire.
I'd do it. I haven't been on a cruise. I'll go. Volunteer, whatever.
Volunteer. Okay, Daniel's going.
If Morimoto is there cooking us all dinner, we're there.
There you go.
That's a heavy caveat. I also wanted to talk about the judging panel because judging panels are always pretty stellar for the finale. And the judge of honor was Emeril Lagasse, which, he always seems to get a huge reaction when he's on the show. But I thought it was interesting because it was a really LA heavy judging panel. There was Bricia Lopez of Galagetza, former LA Food Podcast, I might add. And of course, James Beard Award winning chef of Anajac Thai in Sherman Oaks, Justin Pichatrungzi. Now, Jessie, I know that you know Justin?
Justin is a dear friend of mine. NDA knew that he might be filming on this season. You guys, not even to win this, I just wanted to nerd out and know behind the scenes anything from him. And if you could see the text, I showed them to you guys, but the text between us is just, there was nothing. There was no give. He did not give anything. He just fangirled over Emeril, which I don't blame him.
Saul, would you fangirl over Emeril?
I mean, you never know when you get in front of someone. I will say growing up, like, Emeril wasn't on my television quite as much for whatever reason. So, I mean, I'd be excited to see him for sure. But there are probably other chefs. Like, if a Gregory Gourdet was there or a Kwame, then I'd be fangirling in a different way.
Yeah, that just speaks to our Top Chef nerddom. Daniel, in terms of just like the way that the judges comported themselves, sort of like, the sort of feedback they got, do you think the LA ones shined?
Yeah, I thought they did a great job in kind of, they felt like they belonged on that panel. And sometimes, I think especially with Tom and with Emeril, you can feel a little bit like we don't belong here, and I thought that their comments were good and they seemed to hold their own.
Jesse, you can tell Justin from me that I thought he was great on television, actually. He had some really good sound bites. He looked fantastic. Whoever, picked out his outfit, if it was himself, my God, good job, Justin. I think he might have a future at this.
I think he'd be great on TV. The personality, I think, was not even shown yet in that little sneak peek.
Yeah, well, excited to see more. Now, let's get into a little bit more of the competition, sort of like gameplay aspect of it. One of the sort of most quintessential things that happens during the finale is that they bring on the old contestants so that the chefs can pick a sous chef. This is oftentimes a critical moment. They brought out, like, I want to say 6 chefs from the past. There was Manny, Michelle, Kalina, Sue, Laura, and one more. Amanda, of course. Danny ended up picking Manny. Dan ended up picking Amanda. And Savannah ended up picking Michelle. So I got to ask you this. Who do you think made the best choice, and who do you think made the worst choice?
Well, the worst choice is kind of obvious in retrospect because Manny did his ever-loving best to make sure Danny did not win this finale. It seemed, whether using up all the cantaloupe, which was meant for something else, or undercooking the lobster, it seemed like Manny was one of the greatest barriers Danny had to overcome this episode. So I would have said, yeah, maybe a Sue. I know Sue cooks. When Sue is leading like a cook, he's very creative and crazy, but I feel like he must have a lot of like technique and fundamentals behind that. Maybe I would have gone with a Sue instead if I was Danny. And I think the best choice was Amanda for Dan because I totally liked, they have a great dynamic and friendship and connection. And it totally makes sense to me to just like, I mean, Amanda's a great chef in her own right, but also just pick someone who you're going to have a good time with. I like that philosophy, and I think he nailed that pick.
Daniel, curious, who would you have picked?
Laura. I would have picked Laura.
Wild.
I think that she's like all business. And so she would have just gotten, like, she just would have been there and been like, yes, chef, we're going to know, we can't, I got that, like taking it all off my hands and my plate. I don't even know that I would have needed to cook, to be honest.
Yeah. So just like shoving off the work. That's your tactic,
exactly.
Basically. That's kind of what Savannah did. I mean, like, Michelle took a really active role in that kitchen, and she was offering a lot of input and a lot of sort of like direction. And Michelle definitely has the chops to do that. She's proven that. But at times it felt like Savannah was like, I don't know. It felt to me that Savannah was second guessing herself at times because Michelle was giving her pushback. Is that just me? Jessie, did you sense that at all?
I felt that exactly. I felt like a lot of the big decision makings came from Michelle, not only just being a support, but also she was the one with the like answers when there was a, what should we do, this or this? Michelle always had the answer. So, which, Michelle is a great contestant.
Great contestant. Absolutely. Jessie, curious, last thing on this point, who would you have picked?
I would have picked Sue. I think the precision, the skill level, there would be no ego, but it would just be like, I could trust him to take care of all the finessing and everything.
Sue, I think, is the right choice. Laura is the wrong choice. No offense, Daniel, but
wow.
It's not the worst choice. Like Manny was definitely the worst choice. The fact that Danny picked him, it's a miracle that he went on to win.
I get why Danny made the pick. They seem to have they had like a good vibe together, it seemed, but yeah, I feel like it instinctually was maybe the wrong direction.
And I'm allowed to say this because Manny was part of my team. So, it's an inside joke between us. Okay, I'm going to quickly recap the meals because I think it's important to sort of set the stage of like who cooked what, right? I mean, every time on the finale of Top Chef, the assignment, what is it? To cook the best meal you've ever cooked? Is that how they frame it?
Best meal of your life. Yeah.
Best meal of your life. Right. So everybody sets out to cook something that speaks to their childhood or like pivotal culinary moments. And Danny and Savannah very much did that. Dan seemed to cook something that was more sort of like drawn from his experiences on the show, which was another, way to do it. For the first course, Danny made a scallop and habanero leche de tigre, one of the like very many aguachiles we have seen on this season. It would have been like a crime if there was no aguachile in the finale, and he delivered. He served it with this cool like nori tuile, which kind of imitated the scallop shell, which was, classic Danny. For that course, Savannah did a saltfish fritter, sort of like based on her time in Boston. And Dan did a tuna tartare with ruby red grapefruit and some black garlic lebna with some other Caribbean accents to speak to Curacao, the place that they were holding the finale in. I thought it was really interesting that they absolutely hated the texture of Dan's tuna. I never thought that would be a problem.
Well, the fact that they were saying it was the same mushiness as the grapefruit, it just did not sound appetizing. All the flavor components did, but the texture of it just did not sound good.
But on the flip side, Danny's dish, they said that the scallops were under-seasoned. And if we know anything, Tom hates under-seasoning, right, Saul?
He does. It was weird because, and we'll talk about, I suppose, the finale as a whole and maybe who should have won based on what we were shown. But the way they did end up harping on it at judges' table, but in the moment, what Tom said was a couple flakes of salt, and this is a perfect dish. So
Yeah.
that is criticism, but like couched in actually like pretty high praise. I think they loved the dish. They agreed it needed a little more salt. I couldn't tell if it was like this is under seasoned trash. It wasn't that. It was like, ooh, just a couple grains of salt, and this is perfection. So I think coming away, you weren't sure. Like it seemed like Savannah might have won this round, or that Danny had a bunch of knocks against him. But I think it was actually like a pretty high level dish that they just maybe harped on in editing that he had this one piece of feedback.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, second course. Danny made smoked mussels, plantain, and charred cabbage. Savannah did spiny lobster, agnolotti, lobster broth, almonds, and grapes. And Dan did his grilled snapper, ginger scallions, braised pumpkin, and smoked snapper dashi. What did you think about this round, Daniel?
It was very interesting. It's hard for me because I'm coming at it with like all of this for like 72 hours, you know? And so I just was really drawn to Dan's food in general. And so that dish in particular was very unique and interesting to me.
I think this was a great example of Dan sort of like just like showing how he is such a good cook, because we saw in the kitchen, he was having a lot of trouble with that pumpkin, and he figured it out. He like problem solved and served the pumpkin, and everybody talked about how much they liked the pumpkin. So the big problem in this round was
pasta. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
the agnolotti. And you know about pasta now that you spent some time in Bologna, Jessie.
Oh, texture is so important.
Yeah. When they described it as like dry brittle pasta with like overcooked lobster inside, I was like, ooh, that sounds like cruise ship food.
when Kristen, if I was Savannah, when Kristen turns to you as she's eating the pasta and goes, "What was your recipe for this pasta?" I would have thrown myself off the cruise ship. Because as soon as she asked that, you messed up. And unfortunately, this is one of those things where, so Michelle won on a pasta dish the very first episode of this season, but she had also said she hadn't made pasta in like 5 years when she'd done that. She didn't have a ton of experience. She ends up being responsible for this pasta and doesn't quite work out for Savannah.
Yeah, this is like when a basketball player drains a three early in the game, but they're not really a shooter, and they keep doing it the rest of the game and just bricking every time. That's kind of what Michelle did with pasta a little bit, you know? Too harsh?
Okay.
Too harsh? Okay. Third course. This was Danny's weird dish. Spiny lobster with salsa, matcha, squash, and persimmon. And he made a Burmese curry-style chaza sauce. And I want to say he had like a mayonnaise in the dish as well. He was talking about. Savannah made a seared grouper with mofongo, which didn't quite work out for her. And Dan made what I thought was the best looking dish of this entire finale, the oxtail ragu with a yeasty dumpling. And he brought back pickles, which is this pickled like Haitian thing that your boy Charlie kept trying to make early on in the season, Saul. And every time he did, would fuck it up hilariously. So justice for pickles, Dan did it. Jessie, what did you think of this round?
Yeah, I thought it was a good round. I actually thought all of them were solid. I thought they all looked great.
Yeah.
I don't think anything was like stand out amazing, but I think they're all great.
Yeah, kind of, we'll get there, but we're going to talk about the overall cooking on this season. This felt like everybody doing their best. Dan seemed to get the best judging, but it didn't, even though he got like the best judging, it didn't seem like anybody was particularly like blown away. Am I being harsh with that, Saul?
They were really happy with Dan's dish, with his oxtail ragu. I thought they were really into that. Maybe not like blown away, but I thought it was high level finale cooking across the board. Yeah.
And then of course there's fourth course, which doesn't have to be dessert, but in this case they all did dessert. Danny did a piragua con leche, which was inspired by a snack or after school snack that he would have with his grandfather in Brooklyn. And the key thing here is that he candied seaweed, which everybody was like, whoa, awesome. Savannah did a hummingbird banana upside down cake, and Dan did a yogurt mousse, which sounded very simple but very good. Daniel, which one of these would you most like to eat?
Definitely the Dan's dish. Just sounded refreshing. It's been so hot.
Yeah. It has been so hot. Well, long story short, all of these kind of hit, and it was, you might say this was a tie. Spoiler alert, Danny ends up winning, right? We see judging table, and in judging table, it's kind of misleading. I didn't really know what to think after judges table. And this is where really the controversy around the episode kicked in. Jessie, when you heard judges table, who did you think was going to win the finale?
I had hopes and dreams. It felt very same until dessert when everybody was near tears talking about Danny's. So that was my only glimmer of hope, because everything, and production too, they do have to say you needed a sprinkle more of salt, to give the audience nerves of who's going to win. But the dessert, I think, was the one that sealed the deal when they were crying and over the flavors and the story and the memories and everything.
Tom had that moment specifically. And you kind of know when Tom is moved, that means something, right?
Yeah.
Saul, what did you think? Who did you think was going to win it based on the judging?
I texted you. I thought Dan Jacobs had this in the bag. And based on the narrative of the episode. In fact, I listened to Pack Your Knives today already. I'm a Substack subscriber. They were apoplectic that Dan didn't win based on how the judges table was presented. And I understood where they were coming from, because it was the way it was presented to me. If I was doing the math in my head, was Dan won dishes 2 and 3 of the dish of the competition, the finale, soundly. Just the way they were talking about his oxtail and his fish versus Danny's difficult to eat cabbage, and Danny's missing a few flakes of salt scallop. The narrative really seemed to be that across the meal, Dan was the one who didn't screw up. And I was like, oh, for that reason, I think Dan Jacobs did nail this. And I was actually shocked when they gave it to Danny. We can get into it. I don't want to say it. I go too deep right now. I think there are clear editing choices and versus reality. Tom Colicchio, I don't know if you guys have seen, has been going off on Twitter today about the editing of the episode versus the reality of Judges Table. So I do believe they chose the true winner of Top Chef based on the meal, but purely based on what the show gave us. Dan Jacobs, I was so sure was walking away with this.
Yeah, well, let's cut to the chase then, okay? So you mentioned Tom Colicchio's Twitter, and I'm on it right now, and it's honestly giving Trump a little bit, just in terms of frequency of tweets. He's just going off. He's responding to everything. I'm sure the PR people at Bravo are not too happy, unless they've just given him free reign and say, fuck it, Tom, go off. But can you walk us through a little bit what's been happening?
Yeah, but based on what I've seen, so people have been asking Tom directly, hey, it looked like Dan was going to win. How come Danny won? And Tom has, in so many words, said essentially, look, what you get via editing is not what you get, what we experience on the show. They basically, I need to make it look closer than it is. And he specifically says they really, really disliked the tuna dish, the appetizer that Dan Jacobs put out. Mm-hmm. So on the show, what's really interesting is on the show, we get this comment about the texture. And it's a one out don't love the texture. It shouldn't taste like that. And it's kind of the thing they say, once at the table while they're eating and once at judges table. Versus I feel the salt stuff, they really, on Danny's advertising, really harped on these few flakes of salt, and everyone thought it was undersalted and all this stuff. When I think in reality, Danny really won the appetizer strongly with a scallop dish, and they didn't really harp on how heavy the mistake on Dan's tuna texture was. So I think so basically Tom has reiterated over and over on Twitter that it's not a question. If you'd seen Judges Table, it was a very clear winner, and it's just a question of the directing and producing and editing decisions of Magical Elves, which may have kind of thrown folks for a loop, which I think is a problem. I think it's always fine. They do bait and switches kind of all the time throughout the season. This year's Restaurant Wars, I thought, was a pretty good sort of bait and switch narrative. But in your finale, the finale is business, and you don't want to lose the trust of your audience, because the audience ends up questioning the judges if they're told one narrative and given a different outcome. And so I think there was a mistake there, and maybe we'll revisit also the more broad producing and directing decisions they've made throughout the season. Though that's the lowdown on what the controversy is, and I think kind of what the story is behind it.
Drama.
Daniel, do you buy into the controversy, or is it much ado about nothing?
It seems like just TV being TV, a little bit. Top Chef is always like that. Where I mean, this was a particularly good season where I think Dan could have won or Danny could have won. You know, I don't really know that Savannah had that much of a chance. But I mean, she could have cooked a great meal, but it didn't go that way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't know. I don't want to know. I don't want to think Danny's going to win the whole time. I liked, because I wanted Dan to win. And so I liked being able to hold hope, hope till that last second where I'm like, it's going to be Danny. And then they say Danny, you know, so it's good entertainment.
I think that's probably the gamble the producers took, is like, there's two kinds of people in this world. There's Sauls and there's Daniels. There's people who are going to like it, you know, and people who are going to get on X and, you know, like tear us a new asshole about it. And I think actually there are a lot more Daniels in the world who are just watching TV and not questioning the judges, you know? And that's like, you're there for the food, and that's what you're there for, you know? Whereas like you're thinking about production and the House of Cards saw, like, you know, you got galaxy brain on this one a little bit.
No, it's a fair point that I'm probably up in like the 1% of, maybe even like more than that. Like, guys, during this season as it was airing, I've also watched all of Boston, most of California, and some of LA. Like, I am always watching Top Chef. I'm not normal. So I think it's an accurate take that my nitpicks are not those of the broader world. Though, Jessie, I'm curious about your take on all this.
I watch it like you. I do watch it production. I do. I can't get lost into it. I'm picking apart all the little cues and what they're showing. So even with the whole salt scandal, it didn't scare me at all. I knew that was the best dish, the first round.
So you were confident by the end that like Danny was going to win and he was the right person to win.
Absolutely. Also, just his background skill level, they didn't even go into like the technicalities of certain dishes, like the little tweel on the salmon. They didn't even talk about those kind of things. You know, those got lost in the editing room, or they didn't even need to talk about them when they're you know, comparing dishes.
Yeah, I wonder if that's intentional too, because obviously like last year and the last few years, I guess now, with Buddha and sort of like how technical he was and how much time they spent on like his goddamn molds and stuff, like it was so obvious by the end of it that he was going to win. I wonder if they didn't spend as much time on that, highlighting that with Danny, because they didn't want to make it seem like he was maybe head and shoulders above the other cooks.
Maybe not. I mean, like it became clear. First of all, Danny won 5 elimination challenges and no one else won more than 2. I don't know if people can realize that because some of the storytelling in the season was so kind of muddled, but he truly was the dominant chef throughout. And Buddha still, I mean, to the very point they've made, like, kind of should have lost last year. If Sarah had cooked her liver last year, she would have beaten Buddha. So there's no guarantee ever, right? Depending like on who's going to end up on top based on past performance. Top Chef, any week could be anyone could win, right, or go home. I think look. I'm fine with how the finale played out. I think the right person won on the season. Like Danny, I think is the highest performing chef on this season. I think he will represent Top Chef and the brand. He is a Top Chef champion. You could like tell 4 episodes in, like he has the vibe of a champ. And so I'm happy he ended up on top.
Jessie, you agree the right person won?
Oh yeah.
Not biased at all.
No, I nerded out watching him too. I think it was really fun to watch all the challenges. I loved him and Rosika's relationship. That like made me excited. Just see like the nerdiness of the creativity behind everything too. It was really fun.
I do begrudgingly admit that I think the right person won. Although, you know, Dan put up a great fight, man. Like he was like narrative wise and honestly just like cooking wise. It was cool to see someone who was just like, hey, I've tried so long and hard to do this thing and I'm here. I'm giving it my best shot. And I don't always believe them at the end when they're like, I'm happy with the outcome no matter what. Dude, I genuinely bought it when he said it. Like he meant it. He was actually happy with the way that things turned out. Now, I'd like to at this point transition to talk about the season as a whole, because we've talked about the finale, but obviously, and Daniel knows this all too well, it's a much longer season than just the finale. And this was kind of a new season in a lot of ways. Obviously, we had a new host, there were new rule changes. Let's start with the nitty gritty, okay? Obviously, there were some changes that came along this season. First and foremost, we had longer episodes. We had the fact that they were no longer offering immunity for quickfires, but they were offering cash prizes for quickfires, and they were offering immunity only for elimination challenges. Daniel, you just saw the season. You saw the whole thing right now. How did you perceive those changes?
I loved the immunity change. I thought that was a really fun. I thought it was meaningful. It was like a meaningful way to handle it, where there's never a cook that doesn't matter anymore. I liked the like cash, like total cash one like thing. That was kind of fun, like a fun little addition after quickfire, cash winnings. And then I think had I been watching week to week, like you guys, I would have loved the longer episodes. But this week, like, come on, guys, let's go. Like I was felt a little slow sometimes. So,
Jessie, do you think that they made the best usage of the longer episodes?
I think at the beginning, yes. I liked that there was room to show them as humans too. It wasn't just competition. I think we got to see a lot of breaking of the fourth wall. Even with the judges, I enjoyed that because there was more. It wasn't so presentational anymore. It felt realer with the longer time. The change I did not like was when they were comparing their quickfire challenge within their elimination. I did not like that choice.
Oh, basically during the elimination judging, when they are okay, we've judged the elimination dishes. Now we're going to judge the quickfire ones again and take those into account. You didn't like that?
I did not like that. I think they should be separate choices, separate competition, separate everything.
Interesting. Saul, I see you nodding along with alarming vigorousness. Why so?
I will say.
By the way, Saul.
Yeah.
Feel free to go off on production anytime you want. Like I know you are bursting at the seams to do it. Just do it whenever you want. Don't wait for my invitation.
Well, here I don't want to. Here's what I'll say. I actually feel, and I'm coming at this from a place of love, from a place of joy. And Luca and I have been talking about this season as we've gone on, like the midway point, restaurant wars, etc. And I've been optimistic throughout. And like saying, hey, because the season's gotten like a decent amount of criticism in terms of quality of contestants, some of the challenge designs and stuff like that. But throughout I was saying, guys, it's just you have short memories. We were coming off World All Stars. There was a whole and now we're going back to normal Top Chef. Just give it a second. This season being at the end, I think a lot of the stuff that they tried in terms of quickfire meaning nothing in terms of the gameplay, just cash prizes, and no immunity. And then later, as Jessie said, integrating halfway through the season, quickfire actually does sort of matter in elimination now all of a sudden. And even the longer episodes, I think the way they executed them mostly didn't work for me. And so I'll start with, for example, the question you asked, Luca, which is around, or the point Jessie raised, which is around the integration of the quickfire performance into elimination decisions, like in episode 10. Where Tom and Gail start joining the quickfire so that they can say, hey, if you are at the bottom of elimination, your quickfire performance will come into play for the final decision. Completely vague how they were going to integrate this, unclear the criteria, and based on the actual decisions they made, inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
When Sue was sent home, it was in a week when he was on the highest end of quickfire performance, with the worst meat they could have had at that quickfire. Manny was against Sue in elimination, had the first choice of meat, ribeye, and underperformed in quickfire.
Don't remind me.
And yet Sue goes home. And I was like, what are we doing here? Just like, can we be clear on what the parameters of the game are right now, right? Quickfire not having immunity, I guess, to me, I want quickfire to matter for the competition. That's just me. The way it worked out is just fine. At least there was clarity for the most part until this point. And you're like, what are we going for? Like, what's the point? And finally, on the longer episodes, I actually feel like, and again, having watched a bunch of old Top Chef as I'm going along here,
psychopathic.
Aside from those early episodes, as Jessie mentioned, most of that extra time was filled with B-roll of cooking and grocery shopping, which is not the best use of time. I've actually had conversations with like casual Top Chef watchers in the office or like at work, and they're like, the episodes seem like slower and more boring now. And I'm like, it's because it's like 15 more minutes of commercials and B-roll. which don't need to be there. That time could be much better used consistently to spend time with judges or contestants to get to know them and their thinking. But I think they kind of lost their way on that. And so something throughout the season for me was a consistent like lack of focus, lack of sharpness. Some of the challenges, the chaos challenge, guys, where they couldn't even describe what the challenge was intended to achieve and how they're going to judge it. And someone who I think Danny won that challenge when Savannah better met the criteria of the brief. Kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to go too far off here, but I think there were a lot. I mean, we thought the biggest change coming into the season was going to be Kristen coming in for Padma. She did, for the most part, a really good job. I think she could build her stage presence even more, and I think she will as she gets more experience. I think the finale was Kristen's best episode on the whole, just like as a presence, as a host. But I think a lot of the other changes did not serve the show best.
Yeah.
Like, I'll stop there. But I think there was a lot of, I think it was a bit of a hit, swing and miss for the most part.
Yeah.
It was like 2 strikes of a season and then.
Well, hey, let's dig into some of the changes that maybe did work. Okay. So you mentioned it there, right? Which is Kristen was the host this year. She replaced Padma, who had been doing it for 20 years. Daniel, I know that you were particularly distraught when Padma announced that she was stepping down. How did you think Kristen did in filling her shoes?
Yeah, I'm still distraught. I will say that, but I think Kristen. I have 2 thoughts about Kristen. I'm going to preface it by saying I think she did a great job. She really, really did a great job. It's a different feeling having her there, and the reason for that, I think, is because Padma had a mystique around her that we didn't know her. Like, she was this like goddess that just came in and like knew food and why, and like, you know, like you were kind of terrified of her and loved her at the same time, you know, but you didn't know her really that well. Like, you got to know her a little bit over the years, but you never felt like that. And Kristen, we knew her when she was like a poor chef, you know, on Top Chef, which is cool to see the transition, but it's like, we know who you are. And I think that kind of actually part of what you were discussing, Saul, in the like the feeling of the length of the episodes and all of that, I think that had to do with the fact that there was like the host is right there. Like, we know her, like it's just, there's less of this like hierarchy there, you know? And I think that'll change as the years go on. But this season in particular, like, she was right with the contestants, you know, a lot of the time she could relate to them, and we, you know, which was the right move for her, but it's just a different feeling than Padma. And then my only like beef with Kristen is she's got to work on the quick fire ending. It's what is it? Time's up, utensils down. She did it like 9 different ways. She kept saying utensils are down. They're not down. They're down.
This is something you can only pick up on if you binge the season in 72 hours with no sleep. That's the only way you can pick up on that. Yeah.
Yes. Bugged me. I was like, maybe Padma had it in her contract that that's her line and they can't say it. I'm going like in my head. I'm like, well, they got to pay Padma $200,000 every time she says it. You know?
Damn it, Kristen, you did it again. Oh man, that is hilarious.
But great job. I do like her. And I love the Dish with Kish.
That's what I was going to ask you, Jessie. Did you have a chance to watch Dish with Kish?
I love it. I love it. Especially, I think, for as us being creators, right? To anytime see production of this kind of stuff being made, that like they're showing how they do the glamour, you know, dish shots. They're showing a lot of the behind the scenes kind of stuff. They're showing her like in flats and then having to put heels on. I really, really loved it. I think it humanized her. So maybe that's where a lot of the length came from this season, is because it wasn't so much of a hierarchy as you were saying. It was more humanizing. But I kind of loved that about her as a host. But yeah, Dish with Kish is so much fun.
Here, I completely agree with you on the humanization factor. Like, to me, having Kristen there, it just felt like the show was so much more approachable. And I was like interested to see what she would bring to the table every single episode in a way that, you know, I kind of knew what Padma was bringing to the table every episode. Like, there was very little variation with it, but Kristen always kind of had like a wry smile on her face. She always had like, you know, a couple F-bombs in her. She has like a different sort of sense of humor. Like, I really appreciated the sort of new sort of twist she gave the show. And yeah, Dish with Kish, great addition. I know you binged that in its entirety, right, Saul?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have an episode or two left, but I freaking love it. Also, seeing the All Stars come back and interact with Kristen and like talking through how they approach the challenge, make it twice as long. I want so much more Dish with Kish. It was so great.
So make the show half as long, make Dish with Kish twice as long.
Take the 15 minutes extra from the show, put it into Dish with Kish, please. That would be great.
We love it. We love it. And they do sponsor integration in that one too, but it feels a little less ham-handed, like it's just like in cooking, and that's where sponsorship belongs, not in like dictating an entire kitchen. Yeah, exactly. Cruise ship. Okay. Moving on to, I think, is what is going to be an interesting subject, which is the contestants, right? Every season, we have a little bit of variation in terms of the level of contestants. I think back when the show started, there were very few like head chefs, executive chefs, people running kitchens. It was a lot of sous chefs. Over the course of the show, we've seen that change, and now we've got James Beard Award nominees, semifinalists. We've had a couple people who have flirted with Michelin stars and stuff like that. So we've had some pretty exciting contestants recently. Let's start with you, Saul, real quick on this. Please don't blow a gasket. But what did you think overall of the level of contestants this season?
I think overall it was a little bit of a weaker batch. I don't think it's a disaster. I don't think it was people were really like. There's a podcast I listened to called The Watch. It's a TV show podcast. And one of the co-hosts has been who loves Top Chef, has been losing his mind over how poor the chefs have been this season. And I don't think it's true. Again, we've had Portland two or 3 years ago, which had some of the best baseline contestants Top Chef has ever had. First time they've only had executive chefs on the show. And we had World All-Stars last year, LA All-Stars not too long ago. It's been a really hot streak. And these contestants, this batch for the most part, was more like a Houston, which we had in between. It's similar to that level. I do think on the whole, it's probably a low bottom half of overall talent we've seen on a Top Chef season. But it's not, I would love to see Dan Jacobs and Savannah would not be out of place in an all-star season. Russica for sure would not be, right? So there still is there was still a core level of talent here. For whatever reason, there were a couple of clunker episodes. The cheese challenge that became a croquette challenge, not great, not how you want to show up. Buddha was very critical of that. I will say the episode that broke me was the penultimate episode when no one cooked a fish properly. I suspect that might have been the cruise ship's fault. I suspect that could have been cruise ship kitchen adjustments, though Laura, for some reason, served a dirty banana leaf. No accounting for that. He's serving the Top Chef judges dirt. So that was the one that broke me, and I was like, this is not good. But no, I think on the whole, looking back, you have a couple all-star level chefs. You have a truly solid champion. And then you're kind of going up against World All-Stars in your rearview mirror. And that kind of made the vibe seem a little, you really felt the level lowering from that.
Yeah, I think it was a good range. I agree with exactly what Saul said. I think, you had your middles, you had your tops, and you had ones that I don't remember, sadly.
Last question on the season before we do our superlatives, one of the most fun parts of any season recap. Daniel, you just watched this. You just binged this. It probably feels like you took a plane ride to Wisconsin yourself. And my question is on Wisconsin, how good a job do you think they did in showcasing the state? Do you want to go there any more than you did before?
Honestly, yes, because I 0% wanted to go there before. I don't 100% want to go there now, but I'm in the middle. I actually thought when they did this, I was like, we can do cities twice. I was like, we don't have to go to Wisconsin. Just do New York again. Just do, but it was cool. It was interesting. It was, I think, the supper club and the fish boil and the cheese and the cranberries. That was all kind of a cool, it was different. I don't know that it's inspiring the best work from chefs, but it was I had very low expectations. And then I was like, oh, it's a kind of a nice little city over there.
Well, alternative idea for Jessie's prize. We could all just go on an LA Food Pod funded trip to Milwaukee if you want.
It's a choice.
That's actually probably cheaper for you.
It's true, especially if like Cato wins or something. I'm fucked if Cato wins. All right, well that's a good way to sum it up. It wasn't bad, but we're not dying to book our ticket to Milwaukee just yet. Okay, let's move on to superlatives. Why am I having such a hard time with saying that word? Most likely to fuck up the word superlatives? That's me. Okay, Jessie, let's start with you. Most surprising early exit.
Besides David Murphy, who, we thought we'd have some entertainment from. that cowboy hat made it for one episode.
I forgot that name until right now, and it all came flooding back.
Mine was Rossica. I was real surprised that it was a pretty early exit.
You saw her in the beginning. You're like, this one's going to the finale, So I'd agree with that. Daniel, most surprising success.
Dan, to me, I would have pegged him as like a mid-range and not becoming my favorite contestant in years. That was surprising.
I could see you guys being buddies, seriously.
I think so. Yeah, we will at some point.
Yeah. I like that optimism. Saul, the how are they still here contestant?
This one goes out to Manny, who somehow outlasted Russica and Sue by serving store-bought chips and guacamole at a fish boil. And I was like, how? and week after week serving, like, I remember it was brutal. Kristen was like, Manny just serves meat, veggie, sauce every week. Have you guys noticed that? And they're like, yeah, we all noticed that. And eventually I'm like, I could cook what Manny. Shout out to Manny for making me think I could be a fine dining chef. Thank you, Manny. Very acceptable.
There was a point where they're like,
yes, Manny.
Okay, Manny, now's the time to push yourself. It's like, okay, I'm going to push myself. And he made like a fish dish he always makes or something like that. I was like, oh my God. And he's on my team the entire, well, we don't need to talk about that.
Sweet guy, by the way. Also, great personalities across the season. Should be said. This was like there were a lot of folks to root for on this one. I want to make sure that's not lost.
Quality personalities.
Great personalities and great friendships too. Like the whole, like Manny was clearly very beloved with Danny. Like I actually really like the scene where Danny's walking around the grocery store in Curacao being like, Manuel? Manuel? He's just like nowhere to be found. I love that. All right, Jessie, challenge I would have loved to judge the most.
For me, it's always Restaurant Wars. I think I would like thrive in being a judge on that because there's so much more than just the dish. And sadly, as a diner, I can't turn those things off. So I think I'd be a great judge for Restaurant Wars.
Actually, Jessie, I have a question for you. Since you know production, and I feel like you always surprise me with like, oh yeah, I'm texting with this person. How does one actually become like a person who's just eating at Restaurant Wars? Can we make that happen somehow? That would be so dope.
Okay, we got a year. I think challenge accepted. Let's make this happen. It's gotta be in a city by us. Can you imagine? I know I would travel anywhere for that, honestly, in the continental United States. So fun. It'd be so fun.
Daniel, chef you'd most want to get a beer with?
Laura. I just wanted to see you. Dan, obviously.
Obviously. A beer. I feel like beer with Laura would be interesting.
Oh, I am definitely like in love with her a little bit, but
actually, a really quick story. My boss got dinner at Dalida, Laura's restaurant, and Laura came out and spoke to her and her fiance for like an hour. Yeah, she said it was really cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No way.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
No, by all accounts, she's a really great person. Like, actually, our guest next week on the podcast, Chef Santiago Lastra of Cole, he mentioned that Laura used to be his roommate back when they used to work together in Spain, and they were like very good friends, and he was great vibes. So I can only imagine that Laura actually has a great personality. I do wonder sometimes with like chefs who are coming from other countries, sometimes like they're on TV, English might not be their first language. They might not be like as comfortable showing off their personality. So I'm all for getting a beer with Laura too. I'm sure she'd be a great time. Saul, last superlative, dish you'd most want to try of the entire season. Is there a Charbel onion dish?
Ooh, I mean, there are a lot of options for this. For me, the one that stands out, and I can't remember how it's described, but Savannah's chaos challenge dish, where she made a dessert that had like greens in it. Like it was a dessert that Maddie Madison and Tom were like, she can't pull it off, and then she pulled it off, and it sounded like completely like weird, crazy combo.
Mustard.
Yeah, mustard greens. That's right. Yeah. And it was like, this isn't a dessert, but apparently it is. I wanted to see what that's like.
Fair enough. That's a great answer. Okay. We're coming to the end here, and we're thinking about next season, okay? You already talked about this a little bit, Daniel, which is maybe they could go back to another city instead of always trying different regions. Jessie, where would you like to see them go next season for season 22?
I like this idea of a revamp at a place we've already been. I mean, selfishly for us now, I'd love for it to come to LA.
Yeah.
Because we've got to be there and try some dishes. I don't know. What about even Hawaii? Like something island and different than the middle city, middle America. That would be really fun.
Hawaii would be great. They haven't done that, right? They've probably been for like a finale, I'm guessing, but maybe not. But yeah, that would be really interesting. Daniel, any advances on New York?
I think New York would be the right choice. I don't remember the last time they were there, but New York is ever changing and obviously a food mecca in our country. And I would love to see them return there, and see what's new and fresh. And, I would love to see it.
Speaking of next season, I'm going to flip this one to Saul, but any recommendations to the production team for season 22?
I like these ideas. Oh, are you saying for the city or for like the overall show?
I'm saying overall show.
Please, I look. So Tom has said he actually would want to get rid of immunity as a whole in the show because he doesn't know why anyone should have it. I would rather them do that than do what they did with immunity this season. Please give us more judges and time with Tom, Kristen, and Gail. Tom and Kristen, by the way, have an adorable dynamic and like really seem to be friendly with each other. Show that. I don't need more grocery shopping. It's fine. Imagine you have 60 minutes to show me grocery shopping and cooking and then come up with other stuff for the other 15 minutes. And then let's do away with this vague quick fire is included in elimination decisioning. Let's go back to basics. Kristen's a star. It's going to work out. And let's do Top Chef. Let's do Top Chef. My one is no more fake drama. Like, we don't need the fake drama like that. They made such a big deal out of like that one thing where Laura picked an ingredient and used up most of the budget at the grocery store. And she was like the quote unquote villain for like a couple episodes. I don't need that. It's not that show anymore. This isn't a Bravo show in that way. We can like just cut to the chase and have them all be friends. We don't need to build to that necessarily, Okay, final question for everybody. We're going to go around the horn, and then I'm going to let you all go back to your evenings, and Daniel, you can finally get some sleep.
Thank you.
Where do we rank this season generally in the life cycle of Top Chef? And you don't have to come up with a number, but top tier, middle tier, or lower tier. Jessie, let's start with you.
I'm going to middle top. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching it. I think there's some kinks, but I think it's a middle top.
Middle top. I love it. Daniel?
I'm going to go with middle top too, which is my nickname in the bedroom. But I think really, and I know I've said it a couple times, but the Dan factor to me, and it's not just because of my name, but like I just loved it. I've never loved a contestant more in a long time, where I just was like, I felt for him. I loved the way his food looked. I loved who he was as a person. And I love the story. So like, to me, that was such a standout for this season.
Yeah. Sounds like you got Stockholm syndrome by the show, bro. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. Okay. Saul, your turn.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you take all of Top Chef, there are some real duds that we forget about. Top Chef DC. Anyone remember who won Top Chef DC?
Was it Mike Isabella?
Nope. It was Kevin Sabraga. I don't know how to pronounce his name really.
Oh, yeah.
There are real point being, there are forgettable seasons. I unfortunately think this might fit just snug right above those, sort of like a high lower tier. It's a lower tier season, I think. Maybe middle lower, just on the edge. It's a transition season. It's okay for it to have been that. I think as they settle into this new era under Kristen and with the longer runtime, and with a new location and a fresh start next year, I'm not worried about Top Chef or anything, but I do think this one, like I said before, had several swings and misses for me.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us for this wonderful season of Top Chef. I really enjoyed fantasy. I wish I had won. Of course, second place feels better with 4 people than it does with 2 people. So thank you for playing, and I hope you guys will play next year. Daniel, go get some sleep. Saul, go take a cold shower or something. And Jessie, you go have dinner with your wonderful new fiance. But
soak in this win.
yes, soak in the win. And I'll see you guys all at dinner at whatever the LA Times Restaurant of the Year is.
Can't wait.
Can't wait, you guys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks as always to Father Saul for joining us, and thanks to Jessie Evans and Daniel Wargo for once again making time for us to break down Top Chef. If you like what you heard today, dear listener, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, review, subscribe. Seriously, all that stuff really helps make our way up the charts on Apple and Spotify. We'll be back next week with another epic episode, but if you're looking for me in the meantime, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at the LA Countdown. That's TheLaCounTDown. You can also find me on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFOODPOD. And don't forget to come visit our new website, www.thelacountdown.com.